Hello again, and welcome to Just Say No, where we spotlight the innovators behind cannabis's newest products and the groundbreaking ideas driving the legal cannabis movement with some of the smartest minds in the industry. Thank you for tuning in. I'm your host, Maria Calabrese, on KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 106.5 FM. I'm honored and privileged to be joined today by an incredible panel of voices that are as lively as they are diverse. Alan Shore is an entrepreneur, cannabis investor, and multiple Tony Award-winning Broadway producer who brings his expertise from a variety of industries to the cannabis space. Seth Rutherford is the founder of Waterworks, providing a sustainable water management system to the island of Nantucket, and an owner-operator of an award-winning dispensary in Massachusetts. Seth joins us with roots in agriculture since childhood. And Rabbi Yaakov Cohen. Rabbi Cohen is the founder of Whole Kosher Services and the president of Returning Light, a nonprofit dedicated to the study of Torah and Kabbalah. He will share insights into the intersection of faith, tradition, and kosher certified cannabis. Together, we'll dive into some of the most pressing topics shaping the cannabis landscape, including what it really takes to start a cannabis business, given the threats and challenges of operating legally in a federally illegal space. Green rush or bust? And most importantly, in the spirit of the holiday season, we'll explore lessons of perseverance learned from the story of Hanukkah and the concept of kosher cannabis, and what it means to be kosher certified cannabis. So get cozy, but not too cozy if you're driving, and get ready to find out what happens when a Broadway producer, a rabbi, and a farmer walk into a dispensary. Because the rules and regulations we establish now at the crossroads of federal legalization will shape the future of cannabis for generations to come. So let's dig in and explore just what's at stake.
By 2020, Bank of America and Merrill Lynch estimate that will grow to $35 billion. And many experts believe it could eventually reach $200 billion each and every year.
Welcome, everyone, to today's show. I'm looking forward to exploring today's topics through the lens of innovation, resilience, and Hanukkah. In Hebrew, Hanukkah means dedication, and the holiday celebrates the rededication of the temple in Jerusalem in the 2nd century BC after a small but determined and blessed group of Jewish fighters liberated it from occupying forces. So what does this have to do with cannabis, you're probably wondering? Well, despite its legalization in most states, cannabis remains federally classified as a Schedule I drug, a designation that falsely, and I might add, recklessly equates it with dangerous substances like LSD or heroin, deemed to have no medical value and a high potential for abuse. Yeah, this contradiction creates unique challenges for the plant, entrepreneurs, consumers, and advocates, forcing their very existence, their very survival against significant odds that affect us all. I've asked our panel to join us today. I wanted to start with Alan Shore, as an entrepreneur in the space, to give us an overview of the challenges of starting a cannabis business in today's legal landscape. Welcome, Alan.
Hello, Maria.
So good to see you again, Alan.
It's nice to see you also.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. You're going to have great insights. But before diving in, I'd like you to tell our listeners a little bit about your entrepreneurial background in your own words.
I didn't realize I was an entrepreneur until somebody told me I was. So I was always trying to do things differently. And from the time that I really left college, graduated until through the rest of my life, I always thought there were better ways to do things. And the people that I was working for doing other things, I thought, well, I'll try it my way. And then somebody said, well, you're really an entrepreneur. And I said, okay, well, if that's what you want to call me. So my background was in music theater and something that has nothing to do with music and theater, which is accounting and finance. But believe it or not, they do go together. And as a result of that, what I've been able to do is employ my skills from an accounting and from a financial background to help create different companies in the financial services world, now the cannabis world. And believe it or not, the accounting and financial skills that I've acquired over the years has really helped me in being a producer in the theater world, because it's really about numbers. And part of that is making sure that you stay within budget, that the budget's correct, and everything is done the right way.
If you've ever had the pleasure of being in Woody Allen's office in New York, over his desk, he has a sign that says, it's show business.
Right.
Not show. So you are spot on. How do you connect these skills to this cannabis industry?
The same way you would connect the skills to any industry. Being in the financial services world, it's one of the most highly regulated, at least I thought, highly regulated industries in the world. You've got multiple agencies, governmental, non-governmental agencies are always looking over your shoulder. You've got all kinds of compliance issues that you have to adhere to. So the cannabis business is similar in the fact that it's regulated. You've got compliance issues. You've got the same financial concerns of any other business. So the skill set that any person might have in running or starting or managing a business can be employed and can be an entrepreneur in any kind of business, including the cannabis business. And without that skill set, it's going to be very challenging for anyone to be successful in any business. And part of that, and the most important part of that, which is true, again, for any kind of business, is surrounding yourself with people that are better than you, that know more than you in their specific, whatever it is that they do, whether it's growing or in the cannabis business or wholesale, whatever it happens to be, and letting them take the ball, let them run with it. If they make a mistake, they make a mistake, but certainly let them do the things that they do best and stay out of their way so that everybody stays in their own lane. And if you allow that to happen, the chances of success are greater than if you try to step into somebody else's position or somebody else's lane.
Well, before I dive deep in with you into advice for starting a cannabis business, speaking of surrounding yourself with people smarter than you, I am surrounded by it's an embarrassment of riches. So I just want to bring in next the rabbi to tell a little bit about his background in his own words and what he has to do with cannabis. And then we'll bring Seth in, and then we'll dive into the interview with my first question to Alan. Rabbi, welcome.
Great to be here.
Very special to have you here because I understand you're in Israel.
Yes.
I'd love to have you tell us a little bit about yourself in your own words.
Okay. Quickly, I was not always, like many people were not a rabbi before the rabbi. I wasn't raised religious. I was raised very secular. I didn't become religious until I went to Israel when I was 19 years old. And then I was in a rabbinical school and spent 19 years there. And then I got married, raised a family, started a family, and then moved to Texas. So, and that's when I got involved in being involved in kosher food and kosher services. And of course, it branched out. And the quick background story is I had a son who was diagnosed as having brain cancer. He did pass away after a year and a half. But during that time, when he had a relapse, we were introduced into cannabis. I had already been doing kosher food production and giving kosher certification to various other industries. And but here was the cannabis industry. My son was we were trying to give him cannabis in terms of all of the research that was done. Um, and so my father and some friends says, why don't you go and work and see about making cannabis kosher, because it has such medicinal properties. People need it. People are going to be looking for it, and they'll be much more comfortable if it's kosher. So that's when I reached out to what we spoke, Tracy Ryan of Canna Kids, other places in California. I think that's where it started first, and started to make very many products kosher, offering kosher services and then of course I was introduced to 253 Organic on the East Coast. Yeah, woo, woo, woo. That was great, man. Yeah. So, I was really excited to go there and help them out in terms of getting their kosher certification. It was a lot of fun. It's such an awesome dispensary, a great place to visit, to drive there. It's just amazing. So, and I always enjoy going and making my usual routine kosher visits.
Oh, that's amazing. Amazing. My condolences for your son, and my hats off to you for when Western medicine doesn't have a solution for going beyond. I can't even imagine as a parent, first of all, going through something like that. Second of all, having to make the decision to try cannabis, um, and to have gotten to that point to have to do that.
And it was very experimental. Like nobody really knew what was going on then, or any kind of.
You mentioned Canna Kids, Josh and Tracy Ryan. They're just an amazing, amazing couple. And of course, their little girl, Sophie, who was afflicted with a brain tumor. And, back then, I mean, what a mom will do for their child. Tracy actually was able to get Cedars-Sinai Hospital in Los Angeles to give her a piece of her 2-year-old's brain
Yeah.
tissue.
Yeah.
And she transported it herself in an igloo cooler on a plane to Israel. Could you just tell us quickly before we bring in the next smart one here, smarter than all of us, Seth, just tell us a little bit about the difference in how Israel approaches medical marijuana in the United States.
It is stricter. It's harder to get a prescription. It's only medicinal. And they have a very tight knit on the production, where it flows and things like that. It's not so easy. You could just walk into a dispensary. It's so there are a few more hoops to go through in order to get the medicine.
Yes, the hoops aside, it is medically available and has been for decades. So what they have on the United States and the rest of the world is a jump on the research. In fact, it was So
Yeah.
they haven't had that obstacle or burden. So they
So
do have.
when we were in Texas with our son Alicia, we were debating whether to go to California or Israel, because Israel had the research, but we wouldn't be able to access it if we go there.
Oh my.
So we opted to go to California.
Yes. So it's, legalization. It impacts so many people from so many different walks of life in so many different ways.
We're trying to crawl out of the stigma, We're trying to help people crawl out of the stigma, which is really what I'm about, because to make it available and offer it to be kosher, medicinal wise, still a lot of people in my circles are still very much against it, even though it's an edible, even though it's, medicinal, they'll let it, but usually by and large, they still have that stigma there.
We've got a mountain to climb, but
Yes.
I'm glad we're
That's
doing it.
what the Maccabees are about, right? So
That's right, and I'm glad
we're
we're
fighting
doing it.
here. We're against the big Fed.
Well,
That's right. That's
before you
right.
introduce Seth, I have a question for the rabbi.
Okay.
Sure.
Sorry, Seth. Oh my goodness. Go ahead, Alan.
When Moses went up to Mount Sinai in the burning bush, what was that bush made of? And where he saw all
Oh.
Oh my goodness. When the God
Ayahuasca.
Oh, hey Alan, when the God spoke, there was smoke.
Yes.
So absolutely. So Seth, you have your roots as having been working on a farm since the age of 11 years old. Somehow the labor laws, that was legal, but all right, don't get me started. So and you have this background and knowledge in sustainable agriculture. You're the founder of Waterworks, having come up with a water management system to service islands like the island of Nantucket. And you are a co-owner and operator of one of Massachusetts's most premier award-winning pharmacies, 253 Pharmacy. That's pharmacy with an F. So tell us a little bit about yourself and 253 Pharmacy. And Alan, I want you taking notes because we're going to do Cannabis the Musical.
Okay.
Well, I'd like to start off by
We actually did something like that called Flight Over Sunset a few years ago that just didn't work. But it wasn't cannabis, it was other drugs.
All right.
Well, Maria, I'd like to start off by thanking you for having me. I very much appreciate your time and being able to join. I'm a Massachusetts resident, born and raised in Western Mass. And Western Mass, you know, as you stated, is really all about agriculture. I live here, right here in Hadley, and Hadley, Mass, is has I think the second best topsoil in the world behind San Joaquin Valley in California. And I ended up marrying into a farming family as well, farming anything from tobacco to asparagus to corn. And, they do have some cattle kicking around for all the excess, vegetables that they don't sell. And so when I was 21, I had an opportunity to move down to Nantucket with my partner. So, Joe and I moved down to Nantucket and started Waterworks. And we were very fortunate to move to a place like Nantucket and have an inn and, work for some of the wealthiest people in the world that really care about their landscapes and care about their homes, and really gave myself an education there, just, learning all the different aspects of, building sustainable landscapes. I was elected to what was called the Article 68 board. What the Article 68 board was, we were trying to find a way to limit the nitrogen and phosphorus use on Nantucket so that we would not pollute our estuaries. And through that board, we developed a BMP, which is the best management practice. And currently, I believe it still is the strictest in the state on nitrogen use. And we limit the nitrogen use on Nantucket to 3 pounds per thousand. And so that we really try to educate, landscapers and the tradesmen and women, how to properly apply fertilizers so that you're keeping a healthy landscape, but you're not damaging, the environment around you. Cannabis was always, I always used it. I'm a very energetic individual, and I always use cannabis as a way to calm down and a way to just mellow myself out. And I've always had a real passion for it. And from there, when 2008 came around, we really had a passion to get into it. We're builders, we're in the landscape trade. We understand, plant water maintenance. And we ended up, finding very fortunate enough to find Alan and Marcia as partners. And I think that's one of the really things that separates 253 is the partnership that we were able to bring together, because we were able to bring professionals from all different, walks of life, lawyers, financial people, construction people, landscape people, and really kind of bring everyone together to run a very complex industry that doesn't have data, to look up and to see what to do. It's really something that, you have to really make good decisions and see them through and pivot on a dime if the decisions that you made seem to be going in the wrong direction. And So, we ended up partnering. Chris and I partnered with Alan and Marcia, and we built our own facility. We operate our own facility. So, we're a very unique company, and we really worry about quality. Worry about bringing a quality product to the table for customers, something that a customer could find relief in, whatever they're looking for.
Well, you're in a perfect spot to segue from quality. We're 20 minutes into the show, and in California, it is 4:20. So every show at 4:20, we have a segment called Quick Hits. So we're going to get a quick hit where I'm going to ask the rabbi to drop a knowledge bomb for us. And the quick hit that I'm going to ask him is, Rabbi, what is kosher cannabis and how does it become certified?
So, talk about what kosher is. First of all, you have to understand kosher does not mean blessed by the rabbi. Okay. There's a series of laws, the criteria that comes from the 5 books of Moses, covering an entire spectrum of different foods, everything from meat to dairy, fish, fowl, bugs, and grapes. So all of these different levels of food or areas of food have different criteria that meets kosher standards. Like your animal needs 2 signs to be a kosher animal, right? Alan, you know which 2 signs those are?
It has to chew its cud, and it has to chew its cud and have a cloven hoof.
Yeah.
Wow. Ding, 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 ding. We should have asked Alan for the knowledge bomb.
Rabbi of the
Wow.
day. Okay.
Unlike you,
That's
Rabbi,
it.
I came from a very religious home and became secular later. So
Yeah. So that's an animal has to have those signs. And even if it has those signs and it's not properly ritually slaughtered, it's not kosher. So if a cow is not killed in the ritual slaughter way, even though it's a kosher animal, so anything of that cow or any derivative of that, which gets into cannabis because of a gelatin. For most of the industry uses gelatin, either from a pig or a cow, that not kosher, that to make their gummies. Okay, of course, many are making from pectin. That's a different story. But let's say dairy, we don't mix milk and meat. We have an issue of bugs. Now, just to zero in on cannabis, the plant itself, like any other plant or vegetable, has no problems with being kosher, like an apple or a banana. The only issues with certain vegetables or fruits is a predominance of insects, because we're not allowed to eat a bug. According to the Torah, we break 5 commandments if we eat a bug. Okay? And if you know there's bugs in there, you got to wash it and check it before you eat it. Okay?
I knew you were a friend of Green Bee.
Yeah. Green bee. I was wondering, is it a bee that's green or okay. So the plants themselves, I did go to Mendocino. We gave a kosher certificate to a farm there. I did check there, and they have these very little insects called thrips in the buds. Talk about the flower tops. So I asked a very big rabbi about it, and he says, well, because most of the people are burning it because they're smoking it, so the bugs are getting burned, so there's no problem of the bugs. If they're eating it like in a salad, which some people have been prescribed in California.
Raw, yes, raw form.
So then you
Yes.
have an issue. It has to be cleaned of bugs, and don't even know if it can be because of the stickiness of it. So therefore, predominantly, mostly the flower tops really don't really need a kosher certification, but it helps because of marketing. Because don't forget, kosher is not just for religious Jews. Kosher could extend to Muslims, vegetarians, vegans, and health conscientious people looking for that. There's a third set of eyes looking on this product to guarantee that it's safe. Okay? So that's why people, if in a grocery store, 60% of the things in the grocery store have a kosher symbol on it. 60% of the items in any grocery store now in the United States. And people will always choose an item with a kosher symbol over an item without a kosher symbol because they know there was another pair of eyes. It's a marketing.
It's a
But
gold
then when you move,
standard. It's a gold standard, correct?
yes. So then, yes, absolutely. So then when you, now moving on past the bugs, so then when you process the bugs into oil, so then you get into solvents and things that come in contact with the plant. So you have to make sure those solvents are coming from kosher sources. The biggest solvent that's used most likely today is ethanol. Now, ethanol, everybody will instantly think it's corn, it's wheat. It's not necessarily. There are ethanols that are made from grapes, which present a kosher issue because we have a very strict rule about our grapes. Even grape juice, it has to be squeezed from an observant Jew until it's bottled. For sure, wine, because we use it in rituals all the times. The rabbis made very strict decrees that it has to be a Jewish wine. So ethanol could be made from grapes. Ethanol could also be made from whey, which is a cheese, which is also a big, huge kosher issue. So we have to make sure that the ethanol or any solvents that are used in order to make the oils have to come from kosher sources. And then when you go on to that, let's say when you're making your edibles, like any other kosher material, all the materials have to be kosher: the chocolate, the sugar, the flavorings, the gummies, the pectin. All of those items have to meet certain specific kosher criteria in order to be kosher. Okay, so and then there's of course to maintain the equipment. So that's the kosher industry in a nutshell.
Oh, it's fascinating. And what's really fascinating is I'm going to just start a movement that everyone in Congress, everyone and all the decision makers have to get bar mitzvahed because you guys were able to work this out with Jewish law, but America, I don't know. So, thank you. My goodness, say it can, it can. There's always a solution, which brings me to the cannabis, running a cannabis business. Alan, the cannabis industry is estimated to employ over 500,000 people, right? It includes approximately 12,000 licensed retail locations. It's estimated to earn $30 billion a year, more than the Baseball League, National Football League, and NBA combined. Yet, it remains classified as a Schedule I substance, presenting massive challenges that, like you said, startups in other industries aren't faced with. So my question to you is, given the current legal landscape and the challenges that they present to running a cannabis business, who is making all the money? Is anybody making any money? And what inspired you to enter this space?
All right. So the first question is really easy to answer. Who's making all the money? The state for, for like with the tax and the feds. They're making all the money because they're taxing cannabis companies on income that they don't really have, and the tax that cannabis companies have to pay is different than any other industry in the United States. So that's the easy answer to your question. What inspired? The question was what inspired me to do this?
Yes.
Well, not understanding what the federal regulators were going to tax us on,
Uh-oh.
and the idea that with any business, if you can run it efficiently and you can mitigate the tax issues, that you can, and you have good partners and you know what you're doing, then you can make it work despite the tax burden. So that's really what it was, because I had no clue. I mean, not a scintilla of an idea of cannabis up until the time I met Seth and Chris. Nothing.
None of us did. I can't tell you how many people in the state of California didn't vote for legalization or say they wish they hadn't.
Yeah. So it's, it's a business, just like show business or the legal business or the it's the entertainment business in general, and it all has its quirks. But the cannabis business is probably, at least in Massachusetts, the most regulated industry in the entire state with the highest burden of taxation, and that's just it's not basically not fair. And
I thought California was higher.
um, I don't think so. I think we're talking about federal taxes and
Federal. Okay.
state.
I didn't know federal. Wait a minute. Federal Schedule 1, correct? And
Yes.
yet they're able to tax it?
Excuse me.
Isn't it considered to be federally? What group? Group 1 or level 1?
Yeah.
Or, right?
Yeah. So
It's a drug.
it doesn't
And-
allow you to take deductions in the ordinary course of business without getting too technical under Section 162, ordinary business expenses that every other business is able to take, accelerated depreciation and other things that businesses are entitled to. And therefore, you're paying tax on literally phantom income. And that's just, I just think
Yeah,
that's wrong.
280E originated in 1981 during the Reagan administration. And I'll tell you, Rabbi and Seth, I know, Alan, you know this. I'm not sure if you do, Seth, but it came about when a convicted cocaine trafficker argued in court that he should be allowed to deduct his legitimate business expenses, the zip ties for his cocaine trafficking, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And despite his business being illegal, he was able to deduct business expenses. So 280E came in response to that. Congress established the rule which prohibits anyone involved in trafficking controlled substances from deducting their business expenses. And as long as cannabis is on that list of controlled substances, it can't deduct any of its expenses, such as becoming certified kosher, storage and transportation, banking, franchise fees, packaging, marketing. None of it is tax
Waiver,
deductible.
electric bills.
There you go. So I could speak for, I think a legal cannabis operator could face a federal tax rate of around 70%, in addition to the state and local taxes. And on top of this, in Los Angeles, there's a 5% excise tax. So
Yeah.
An easy analogy there, if you're running a retail store and if you did $1 million a year in business and $500,000 was the product that retail store bought to resell, that retail store would pay tax on $500,000. The only thing you would be able to deduct is the product you bought. So you would pay tax on your labor, your parking, your snow plowing, anything above and beyond. And so, in the early days when the margins were high, and I'm talking the early days of Massachusetts when we opened in 19, margins were high. There wasn't a lot of retail stores. We were able to pull profits. As this industry continues to condense and get saturated, it's really become catastrophic for companies. And, they're just not able to survive on margins because you need exponential margins to continue to pay the federal government.
I told you he was smart.
Is it still getting saturated, the market, in your opinion?
Well, I think, I mean, the answer to that is I stutter a little bit. I think we're hopefully on the verge of coming the other way. We're down to like $4.50 a gram on the retail side. And when we get down to $4 a gram, producers can't produce it for $2 a gram and stay alive. And so, and I'm talking the retail at $4.50. So when the retail is $4 and these retail stores are keystoning, we're very close to the bottom if we're not there yet. And just in the last month, we've seen some very big operators close their doors in Massachusetts. And I think that that's going to continue. And so, to get back to, what Alan was saying about cannabis, how it's very unique. Instead of, a lot of businesses where you're looking to increase revenues, in cannabis, you're looking to reduce costs. You run that business on cost base and you don't take risks if costs are associated due to the taxes, because those costs turn into income to you and you have to pay more phantom income. And so it's a very difficult business. So it's really a lean and mean business model to stay alive and debt free. Like I say, people ask, well, how do you survive in cannabis? And it's facetious, right? But it's like, well, don't write a check, because every check you write is income to you, even though you're giving it to someone else. Okay. So it's, it's really, it's kind of it's just, you really have to be very cognitive of how you operate. And, at 253, we've always taken the approach where we don't have a huge wholesale department, and we don't kind of have a ton of marketing, because a lot of companies get themselves in trouble where they spend more to make less. And you really have to watch your bottom lines and be conservative and concentrate on yourself.
You should have a blessing. You should have a blessing, a continued blessing for continued success and growth.
Well, Alan and Seth, and even with the rabbi's blessing, you gave the best advice. You have to go low and slow. You have to be lean and mean. You have to be able to survive legalization. And it's really a conundrum because you don't have access to financing that other startups have. Many financial institutions aren't going to want to touch it if the government's deeming it illegal.
Maria, I'll give you an example of how bad it is. I had an American Airlines Advantage Citibank card, and I got about a year and a half ago, I got a notice from them saying, "We've canceled your card." And I said, "Why?" And they said, "Because you own an interest in a cannabis company and it's federally illegal." I said, "Oh." At the same time, they're also Citibank banks the state of New York's cannabis business. So it's like, okay, well, why can you do one and not the other? But that's how bad it's become at times.
Oh
It,
man.
it is. And, necessity is the mother of invention. So anyone who can survive this should be on the cover of Fortune 500. I mean, it's going to take minds as bright as this panel. And it never hurts to have the rabbi's blessing. But all these entrepreneurs that jumped in believing, hey, this is going to be the next Silicon Valley. It's the next big giant among growth industries. Guys, it's a green revolution, not a green rush. So if you're thinking of going into it, be prepared to join the revolution.
Well, I'll go one step further, Maria. Unless you're, at least in Massachusetts, unless you're vertically integrated, you cannot make money, period. It's just impossible.
Can you explain to our listeners what a vertically integrated license means?
I can now because Seth taught me. So I'm going to let Seth, my teacher, explain it better than me.
So a vertically integrated means that you do everything yourself, where you have your own cultivation, manufacturing, and your retail outlets. And so it's really, in Massachusetts, it's really coming down to the verticals are able to, weather this storm much easier than standalone retailers. If they're in a very good location, they'll do okay. Standalone cultivators and standalone manufacturers, unfortunately, are taking a beating right now, and it's really not fair because the wholesale rates, like I explained before, are so bad at $4 and at $2.25 if you want to look at it that way. They're virtually not making anything. And a lot of the small companies are mom and pop companies like 253 that have invested everything they've have to get into this. And, a lot of them are tied to all sorts of leases and personal guarantees. And and another really unfortunate fact in the cannabis industry is there is no bankruptcy. You go into receivership and you lose everything you own. And I think that's why a lot of people hang on longer than one might think they would. But it's it's definitely not all roses behind the scenes. And the state always, and the federal government always, puts out how much sales there are, but it really doesn't equate to the profits behind the scenes.
Wow. And I'd like to just move on before turning to the strength that we can glean from the story of Hanukkah. I'd like to move on to how all of these federal inaction, all the competing state regulatory down to the local level, all the different federal agencies commissioned to protect consumers, how all of this regulatory game of ping pong affects innovation, and at the end of the day, the consumer getting quality, let alone kosher certified cannabis. What's the impact that this is going to have?
Well, I think that's probably the same for any industry. As desperate times people take desperate measures. And so I think that's really the unfortunate fact. And, people need to stay alive. They need to eat. They need to feed their family. And, when you get into a situation like that, you probably at times aren't putting out the best products due to those type of reasons. So it's very unfortunate. I think anytime you have an affluent business, those type of things are much easier to accomplish. And so it's unfortunate where we are right now, as people are just trying to survive. For 253, we don't try to break any rules and we really just try to stick with quality, because as hard as it is to continue to stay on that line, eventually it will pay off. But it's a grind, and we're edging our name into a piece of stone right now, and we're definitely not done yet. But if you do it right and you continue to do it right, there will be light at the other side. Nothing lasts forever.
Yes, and if you have regulations that facilitate and energize and promote your being able to do it right. Here's a not so fun fact. Rabbi, you were talking about Los Angeles. There are more weed stores in LA than Starbucks, but more than 70% of the LA dispensaries are illegal.
Amazing. And there's no crackdown on them?
No crackdown. That's with all the taxes that the legal guys are paying. Their question is, where is the enforcement? Where are those tax dollars going? They're not going into enforcement. And I want to try to get Mayor Bass on and speak and just regulators we're trying to understand why the police, turn a blind eye. And not to mention, it explains why a huge amount of the biggest legal cannabis companies, valued at up to $3 billion, recently filed for bankruptcy.
Is there any movements out there as far as, let's say, like fixing the regulations, deregulating, or anything like that?
The National Cannabis Industry Association, which could use support. It is the National Cannabis Industry Association out of Washington, D.C., but they have a strong presence in Los Angeles. They're trying, but they have their lobbyists. The multi-state operators have their own lobbyists, and the industry is splintered. So finding guys like Seth and Alan and yourself who have an interest in high quality premium up to the gold standard of kosher cannabis.
Your heart has to be in it. The heart has to be
That's
in
right.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
So speaking of heart, Rabbi, the story behind kosher cannabis, a lot of heart. I'm sorry it came to you through such a tragedy with your son. But can you talk to us about the story of cannabis and maybe some lessons that people in the cannabis industry?
I'll give you one there's a very big Hasidic rabbi who lived about 200 years ago. He was 250 years ago. He's called the Baal Shem Tov. He was like a really big innovator in terms of Jewish practice. He completely just gave an in-depth way that how Judaism can be approached and everybody can have a direct personal relationship with God. And he had one of his followers who was also a tremendous scholar. And he said this about an interesting question that maybe people might have contemplated was, if you look in the world, and most of the medicines of the world, they come from herbs, correct? Would you say?
Absolutely.
Listen to this. Where does that come from, or why is that so? Okay, so here's a little story. On the third day of creation, we know that God created the world in 6 days, rested on the seventh. On the third day of creation, God created the trees and the plants and the grasses. At day three, he created dry land and oceans, and then he created the trees with bearing fruit and grasses. Now, listen to this. Follow me. Follow me. He told the trees, you guys cannot mix. The mango tree does not tango with the avocado, right? No grafting, no mixing, no blending. Voo.
That wasn't
Okay?
very woke.
No, he wants a mango to be a pure mango and an avocado to be a pure avocado. We don't want
All
mango or avocado. Okay?
All right. All
Men
right.
came and they started making. Anyways, the trees were told not to mix. The grasses, he didn't say anything to.
Oh,
The
really?
creator didn't tell him.
Are you serious?
And the grasses are left with this, well, what are we supposed to do? Right? And so they made this kind of a priori argument, this kind of logical syllogism argument. They say, well, if trees, which are normally separate, they don't really grow close to each other, and they were told not to mix. So us grasses, which were all over the place, all the more so we shouldn't mix. Okay? So they made this syllogism and conclusion. They had a little board meeting, right? They had a all in favor, okay? And they all agreed we're not going to mix. So Hashem says, oh my gosh, you guys came up with that all by yourself, okay? And because you guys came up with that all by yourself, I am now going to give you the gift of healing. There's much more way to explain it, but I'm going to explain it right just enough for now. So therefore, God bestowed upon all the grasses and herbs the gift of healing. Now, the interesting thing is there's this one grass that got a bad rap. Poor little cannabis. The stone that was cast away by the builders becomes the cornerstone. That's the rule. The grass that was cast away by the builders becomes the cornerstone. So things that nobody would consider that cannabis would have medicinal purposes, but it has, I think, greater medicinal purposes than ever, right? So
and that's why it's such a tragedy that it's trapped in Schedule 1. But go ahead.
It's getting its way. It's finding its way. Here, listen. Who would ever have thought 30 years ago that such a thing would occur? When California became legal, it was like a huge, what? Who would ever think, right? It had a bad rap, right? Anslinger, right? Was it J. Paul Getty? Who was it? Forgot who it was. William Randolph Hearst. They gave it a bad rap, right? But the stone that was cast away by the builders becomes the cornerstone. So you saw those who will hang on with heart, with lave, like the Maccabees did. They had to fight against the Greeks, who were much more greater, much more numerous, if you want to talk about Hanukkah, okay? You have to have, your heart has to be in it. You have to be coming with a mission of, it helps a lot of people. And that's why I got into the kosher, to make it kosher. A lot of people get helped. It helps a lot of people. I get calls, emails all the time. Where can I find it? I'm here. Where can I get it? So it's a mitzvah. If it's a mitzvah and you're serving and there's a higher reason, it gives us the strength to go on. Right, Seth, Alan, you should be blessed to the strength to continue and God will grant you that strength and you'll continue to be successful to hold on. There were 2 places in Massachusetts which I was giving kosher certification to closed down. They couldn't hold it. Like you said, closing their doors.
Rabbi, you talked about the medicinal mitzvah. Do you think cannabis can open up spiritual pathways? Gosh. You talk about light from above, light from below, and then within, and the
I have a question, and I don't have an answer for you, but I have a question. All rabbis are supposed to answer questions with questions, right?
Yes.
Right? Isn't that the rule? Right?
The Socratic method, yes.
Well, if it has medicinal, why would Hashem why would God make it psychoactive? If it has to have a medicine and it's going to relieve pain or whatever aches or whatever help people sleep, why does it have to have a... So, I think in the back of my head, and I'm just thinking out loud, We have to start. The world has to start thinking differently. And sometimes people are so stuck in their patterns of thinking, which goes into my book. My book has to do with how our thoughts create angels.
Oh,
And
congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
I think it's called The Jewish Guide to Manifesting. That's the name of the book, Jewish Guide to Manifesting, right? So our patterns of thinking sometimes need a shift. Wouldn't you agree? Sometimes if you're stuck in a problem, you need to see it from a different angle. Once you see it from a different perception.
That's the whole point of the title of this show. It used to be on the war on drugs, Just Say No, N-O. And I'm trying to say, just say no, K-N-O-W. There's a Dr. Manesh Gurn. He's in Robin Carhart Harris's lab at UC San Francisco. He was on episode 3, and they're studying the effects of psilocybin and cannabinoids on the brain and on bioplasticity, and talking about, looking into how to break these habitual patterns that do become, ironically, hardwired for some survival reason at some point, but get stuck because the brain wants us to have predictability. They want to make it easy for us and go on autopilot, but we get caught in these loops. So I'm so excited about your book. That's it. I think that would solve many, many, many of the problems.
Well, the world is in that direction anyways. Everybody's shifting, and I think people are looking for more meaning these days. So if it helps to give you, for a person who needs it, to shift to a higher level of thinking for meaning, so then, go for it.
Yeah. And I'd like to just bring in a segment we have called Nip It in the Bud, where we do myth busting. And I was going to ask Seth this one: truth or fiction? Can you make a bong out of snow?
Yes, you can.
Truth? Truth?
Yes.
Matter of fact, he did it last week.
We did that when we were building the facility back way back. You know what I mean? But before we were licensed, it was a lot of snow, and my partner Chris and I did that and took a funny picture of it. So you definitely absolutely can do that.
How much snow do you need? Walk me through this. I've never smoked from a bong. I've never smoked, but go ahead.
Well, we just made, it was like making a snowman, but we just had to make sure there was a channel that came down and up, and you didn't need any water in it. It chilled the smoke nice. It chilled the smoke nice for you. So yes, you can. It's funny. Yep.
Wow.
I am enlightened.
We have a passion for cannabis. We've enjoyed the process as hard as it's been. We've enjoyed every part of the process from building the team to building the facility to operating it.
Wow.
We truly just try to, have that culture at 253, where, all the tough stuff we keep behind the scenes. So, we really have a nice culture there. So people enjoy things like that.
So in closing, did anyone come up with the punchline to what? Did you hear about the Broadway producer, the rabbi, and the farmer that walked into a bar or walked into a dispensary?
Yeah.
Anyone got a punchline?
Sorry, Maria. In all candor, I did win the British equivalent of a Tony for Best New Comedy a number of years ago. I still can't come up with an answer that's funny for this one.
I have a few ideas. Unless Seth, do you have one?
No, that's not my forte. No.
All right. I think the Broadway producer said to the dispensary bud tender, "Do you have something that's going to make me feel like I'm in a chorus line? I'm 20 years old and I can kick this high." And the bud tenders, well, let me think about it. Farmer says, "Do you have anything that's going to put me in the relaxed state I am when I'm in my cornfield and the wind is blowing and the breezes and I want to feel that way?" And the bud tender says, "Sure, we could hook you up there." And then the rabbi says, "I'm just looking to get a little l'chaim." All right, I don't know. That's the best I could do.
I like it.
Thank you for spending your time with us today on Just Say No. This has been an enlightening conversation touching on the challenges, opportunities, and evolving cultural connections surrounding the cannabis industry. I'd like to recap some key takeaways from today's discussion. First, we explored the significant barriers that federal illegality presents to cannabis entrepreneurs and operators who are trying to function legally in this legally gray space, including limited access to banking and the burdens of tax provisions like 280E. As Alan highlighted, these challenges demand creativity, resilience, and a willingness to take on risk that other industries don't face. Yet, as we discussed, for those who persevere, there is the potential to shape an industry that is still in its infancy and create lasting change. We also dove into the operational challenges of owning a vertically integrated dispensary and sustainable farming, thanks to Seth's insights. We learned that cannabis is about more than consumption. It's about storytelling, community, and creating safe and responsible products that reflect care and intention. Seth's artisanal approach mirrors the sophistication of fine wines and spirits, illustrating that cannabis extends beyond medicinal use and could hold a place in both everyday life and even special celebrations. Rabbi Cohen brought us a unique perspective on kosher-certified cannabis, explaining its importance for inclusivity and its role in broadening the accessibility of cannabis products. Beyond faith-based communities, kosher certification represents a gold standard for cleanliness, quality, and integrity in cultivation and production. We talked about the connection to Hanukkah traditions and the question of whether cannabis can facilitate deeper spiritual pathways. It was both fascinating and thought-provoking. As we look forward at the future of cannabis, it's clear that this industry stands at crossroads. Whether it's crafting thoughtful regulations, advocating for normalization and legalization, or simply changing the way people think about cannabis, the decisions we make now, they're going to have ripple effects for generations. To our listeners, remember, cannabis is not just a product, it's a movement, guys, a culture, and for many, a lifeline. The stories we shared today are proof of the diverse voices working tirelessly to navigate this complex industry and ensure it thrives responsibly. Finally, a heartfelt thank you to our guest, Alan Shore, for your entrepreneurial wisdom, Seth Rutherford for your passion for sustainable agriculture and a responsible premium award-winning dispensary, Rabbi Yaakov Cohen for your inspiring perspective on inclusivity and tradition, especially as the story of Hanukkah inspires in us all perseverance in the face of adversity. Thank you for tuning in to Just Say No on KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 106.5 FM. Let's continue to rethink cannabis together. Until next time, I'm your host, Maria Calabrese. Stay curious, stay informed, stay festive, and just say no with a K and a W, K-A-N-O-W. Happy holidays, everybody. Happy and safe. Stay lit, let it glow. Just Say No is a Green Bee Life presentation airing live weekly on Friday afternoons from 4 to 5 p.m. Pacific on KCAA Radio and KCAA TV. Archived audio episodes are on Green Bee Life, greenbeelife.com, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and most third-party major platforms. For archived videos, check them out on GBL TV on Green Bee Life, YouTube, and Rumble. To follow us, our Instagram and Facebook is at Just Say No Radio. To apply to be a guest on the show or for sponsorship and advertising opportunities, go to greenbeelife.com/Just Say No, and feel free to reach out to me, Maria, for any questions. I'm at maria@greenbeelife.com or call me at 818-758-6925.